Thanks for coming out on an iffy night. I guess a good way to put it. Who knows what's going to happen out there? But I think what's really exciting is this partnership that we've always had with the library. I'm Steve Leonard, the director here at the Ridges, and we've always worked with the library on summer reading program and Bailey's Harbor Library in a lot of different ways. Frank is our connection volunteer at the library plus here at the Ridges. So this is kind of a neat introduction to this greater partnership that I think, if anything, that comes out of this is how does the Ridges, the library, and your organization start to think about future programming here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tina to introduce our guest speaker tonight.
Hi everyone, I'm Tina Kukuski from the Door County Library, and thank you, Steve, for hosting us here tonight. We are very excited to be at the Ridges because we feel that this is a perfect location for the program about the great work that's being done at Northwest Passage. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to take a look at the photographic gallery. Wonderful, wonderful photography. Before introducing Mr. Karl, I want to take just a couple of moments to let you know what's coming up for this last week of Door County Reads. Julian Nordic, who is a water quality specialist, will be at Fish Creek on Wednesday to talk about what makes the Great Lakes so great. The play An Enemy of the People by Henrik Ibsen will be read by performers at the 3rd Avenue Playhouse on Friday evening. And our grand finale will be next Saturday in 2 different locations. Library Live at the Miller will present music composer Matthew Hollingsworth at the Sturgeon Bay Public Library at 1 p.m. Matthew composes music for Wisconsin Public Television's very popular and beautiful From the Air series. And then head over to the Crossroads at Big Creek for the Door County premiere of the Wisconsin Public Television production, Wisconsin Water from the Air. Their executive producer, Lori Gorman, will be there at that performance and be able to answer questions and tell you how they do those From the Air series programs. As you can see, there's a lot to do this last week. In addition to all the book discussions that are happening, there's a couple flyers at the back table if you want some more specific information. And our speaker today is Karl. He's Experiential Programming Coordinator at Northwest Passage. Ian comes from a background of wilderness expeditions, environmental education, and adventure guiding. This is straight from the website, Ian.
I recognize it.
He has a BS in biology and has been with Northwest Passage since 2010. And let's welcome him.
Thank you to the Ridges, thank you to the Door County Library System, thank you all for coming out in the, as was mentioned, unknown weather, iffy weather, that's how it was put. Experiential Programming Coordinator, that title is a mouthful, it's a lot. It's kind of ambiguous, which means that I get to do a lot of cool things in my job. One of those things is this underwater photography program. In my talk tonight, I'm going to give a lot of foundation about how this program came to be. Because as I mentioned to you earlier, you don't take kids with mental health issues out to do underwater photography in a vacuum. There's a big foundation, there's a lot of context to how that happens. So I'm going to talk a lot about the background, how this program came to be, and why we think it's necessary at this place and time, and how it's helped the kids that we work with. But if you'll indulge me, this is a literary crowd, right? You read a lot, right? So I'm going to start with a poem, because I like poems. And this one speaks to, you recognize it? It speaks to the mission of what we're doing, and this one just gets to my heart. So this is a piece of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. If you don't know it, here's your opportunity to know it. When despair grows in me and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I chose this poem to start out with tonight because the kids who come to our program are in despair. They're in a situation where their hearts are in despair, and they're in genuine mental health crisis. I'll talk a little more in detail about what mental health crisis crises they're in. But what they're seeking is that feeling of grace, the grace of the world, the peace of wild things, and feeling free. And I feel that our program helps get them there. It's a lifelong journey. But part of the solution is what Wendell Berry references here, and it's the presence of still water. So he hits on a lot of elements that overlap or are analogous to what we try to do in our program. And this just dawned on me, actually using this poem in this talk dawned on me last night when I was at skiing. I'm like, oh, that poem's going to fit for this. Because it does really overlap. But I'll talk a little bit about Northwest Passage. I'll move to this side so I can see you all without creating a vacuum. So Northwest Passage is the organization that I work for. And it's the organization within which our underwater photography program occurs. And it's been around since 1978. The founders of the program we're doing their internships for their psychology degrees in a city, in white wall, clinical setting with kids, and said, this isn't how kids get better. We need to get kids out of this environment and into a different environment to treat their mental health issues. So they went on a limb and they bought a small farm on the Clam River in northwest Wisconsin and set up a program of their own. And it's grown with the times, it's evolved, it's developed into an organization that's a staff of 180 people. We serve about 350 kids a year in total, about 75 at any given time. And we include a staff of folks like me with unique titles and various tasks in our jobs, up to neuropsychologists, therapists, pediatricians, nurses, cook staff, direct care staff. We have a huge staff, a huge team that makes what we do possible. And we're founded in this concept that we call the Passageway. And it's a lifestyle-based approach to helping kids manage their mental health. When managing mental health, we look at three things. I think of it as a three-legged stool. There's psychiatry, which is medication, helping treat mental health issues through medication. There's therapy, and there's lifestyle. And this lifestyle approach is something that kids can take with them, that they can internalize. And there's a lot of factors that may be missing in their lives, given their backgrounds or given whatever they may have been through in their lives. But it includes time spent, and this is evidence-based, by the way, and I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. But it's time spent in nature, it's relaxation, spirit, relationships, exercise, nutrition, service, and recreation. So these are 8 elements that are evidence-based, research-based, to exist in people who live, quote-unquote, mentally healthy lives. So we work hard to instill this lifestyle-based approach in kids' lives when they're in our program. And our mission is hope and healing, providing opportunities for kids who are feeling hopeless, that are full of despair, as Wendell Berry puts it, to help them find hope, help them find ways to heal. When we look at kids, and I'm trying not to bore you or lose people with data, but if some people ask and are interested in what some of the background is of the kids, what they're up against when they come to our program. These are some of the diagnoses that we see in kids. We see bipolar disorder, we see generalized anxiety disorder, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, attention deficit issues, attachment issues, the RAD, reactive attachment disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, borderline personality disorder issues, and alcohol and drug use, which are, frankly, in a lot of cases, maladaptive ways of dealing with the other 8 things there. So we're helping them find other ways to deal with those other things. A little bit on the side, but not too much. Is anyone familiar with this book? Last Child in the Woods? I highly recommend it. I think if you're a crowd that enjoys nature and background on this. In this book, the author, Richard Luke, talks about something called nature deficit disorder. And it's characterized by depression, attention deficit issues, and anxiety. It's not an official diagnosis, but it's kind of a cluster of these things. And when we look at those 3 that are highlighted, attention deficit disorder, depression, anxiety, they line up with what he's talking about in this book. I'm a big fan of Richard Luke. I can't promote his stuff enough. He's got some really great ideas. For any parents or teachers, I recommend his other works here. I had the privilege of meeting him at a talk, and he didn't hold that part up. I put that on there because we're big fans of him. But when we look at those diagnoses that I mentioned earlier, attention deficit issues, depression, anxiety, The orange lines are the percentage of the kids that we work with that have those diagnoses. The blue lines are the general population of kids of the same age in the general mainstream setting. So those three things that are characterized, that characterize nature deficit disorder, are skyrocketing with the kids that we see. So one way that we try to address that is to get them in nature. A little more info here is that 1 out of 2 kids in the UK spends less than an hour outside a day. That's the UK though. We must be doing better in the US, right? We would think, we would hope. Well, just shy of half an hour a day of recess time. Well, maybe they're doing better at home on their own, but I don't know when they have the time to. If they're spending 9 hours a day with media use for entertainment, for kids who are 13 to 18, and 8 to 12-year-olds, which is my little son's age, a little older, pushing 6 hours a day. So that doesn't leave much time for outside time. So I think not just the kids that we work with in our unique setting, but kids in general, and adults for that matter. I'm not innocent of screen time and using devices. But I think we're all lacking in some contact with nature time. Also coupled that with the fact that we are rapidly becoming a more urban population than rural population. If you want to look for the words of wisdom from one of my other literary heroes, Sigurd Olson, wilderness is a spiritual necessity. It's an antidote to the high pressure of modern life and a means of regaining serenity and equilibrium. And it's serenity and equilibrium that Wendell Berry was talking about at the beginning, and it's serenity and equilibrium that the kids we work with are seeking. And we're hungry for it. We'll find the strangest ways to get in contact with nature. I stumbled across this one just last fall. It's not about counting squirrels in Central Park, it's about having an excuse to be outside. And that got me thinking about Central Park and how vital nature is to the well-being of individuals and the well-being of society. Has anybody been to Central Park? It's a gem. And you wonder why Frederick Olmsted and the city planners, when it was planned, would set aside that amazing amount of land in the middle of one of the busiest cities in the world. Well, it's because it's necessary for societal well-being and individual well-being. We've got $35 billion to $39 trillion worth of real estate, but really it's priceless when it comes down to people's well-being overall. And there's science to back up that claim. This is a group of our kids out on a hike just on one of our local trails. But we know, science tells us that being in nature is good for us. So taking a walk in the woods, in a forested setting, versus an urban walk, you see a decrease in cortisol, which is the stress hormone, or one of the primary stress hormones. You see a decrease in your fight or flight response, your sympathetic nerve activity, decrease in blood pressure, and decrease in heart rate, depending on how vigorous the walk was, right? But you see, you can actually even see cortisol levels drop by gazing on greenery, by gazing on forest scenes. So it's in us to want to be in contact with nature. It's part of what we need and what we crave as human beings. Further research by the guy on the right, the guy on the left is great too, but the guy on the right wrote the paper that we founded this passageway concept on, and it included predominantly, one of the strongest elements in it was that contact with nature element. So we wanted to devise a way, when we looked at this information, we wanted to come up with a way, how can we get these kids who are not accustomed to being in contact with nature on a regular basis? And as Tina mentioned, I came from a background of adventure guiding and doing a lot of stuff outdoors. So I've used kayaks, whitewater rafts, mountain climbing gear, all this stuff to try to get people in contact with nature. But it turns out that to get kids in contact with nature quickly and effectively, the greatest tool I've used has been a camera. You put a camera in a kid's hands and they're instantly curious and they instantly look closer at what's around them. So we've been doing this photography program, a nature photography program, for going on 11 years now. Yeah, nearing 11 years. We started out with an America's Best Ideas grant through the National Park Service Foundation, and bought 8 cameras and then began. And we started getting fantastic results. teaching some fundamental skills on composition and basic photography. And really it came down to the kids using their eye to see what was out there and just looking closely. And out of the photography grew this natural tendency for kids to want to express themselves and talk about their feelings, to project their feelings onto the subject in their photograph. I don't know if you've had a chance to walk and look at the photos and read the comments from the students. But Chuck, I'm just a teenager trying to make it, a teenager trying to get there, a teenager trying to move on, a teenager trying to break free. I'm just a teenager that doesn't want to fall through the cracks. And that honest, heartfelt statement from him came from this photo right here, our local, a nearby state park, an interstate state park that we have. We continue to grow the program, our boys program initially into our girls program. It builds curiosity, and we can base a lot of fun science education on it too. We can teach some rather high-level photography skills, playing around with motion blur or slow shutter speed. This is on the Namakagon River, the upper Namakagon. I love this quote here. To me, this picture shows that the river is full of energy, full of life, and a constant flow, and I feel like my life is just like the river. I have all this energy, and my life is now just beginning for the first time. And this is coming from a kid who came to our program in crisis. And he got this inspiration and had this feeling after taking a photograph of water, of flowing water. So we took a lot of photos in our immediate surroundings, our local state parks, the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway, which is our local branch of the national park system. And through some other grant funding and support, we were able to do a series of field trips around field trips. There were more than field trips, expeditions around the country. Everglades National Park, which was amazing. I highly recommend a visit there if you haven't been. You don't get to take pictures of alligators locally, so it's fun to see things like that. And creates a fantastic adventure. Badlands. Again, these are photos taken by our students. This is an early riser, and you know how much teenagers like to get up early in the morning. But if they're motivated to do so with excellent results like this, you can only take that photograph before the sun's fully up. The sun lights up the valley as it's about to steal away the beautiful sky and the graceful clouds, leaving me breathless, drawing a tear to my eye. Greatness surrounds this place. It's not every 16-year-old boy that's willing to admit those deep feelings like that, or is motivated or inspired to share deep feelings like that. Yellowstone. And to find these analogies, for kids to find these analogies and metaphors in nature and project and in themselves and in their relationships and their loved ones is valuable, is extremely valuable, and opportunities they may have not otherwise found. So, following these national parks expeditions and getting this element of photography going as a mainstream stay in our program, we started to wonder, what's the next step? What do we do next with this? How do we continue to grow it? And as we reflected on what we had done, we thought, you know, some of the greatest moments we've had, some of the most joyful moments kids have been around water, have been adjacent to water, or wading it out with our ankles in the water, you know, being right there. We thought, why don't we started kind of turning our wheels on this concept. And then really, when we look at Wisconsin, I mean, look at Wisconsin, those are all the watersheds of the state. Not to scale, of course, we'd be all soaking wet if that was to scale. But it gives you an idea of how water-rich we are in this state. At the same time, this book was getting some wide review. And again, another book I couldn't recommend enough. It's the concept of being in, on, or underwater can make us happier, healthier, and more connected and better at what we do. It's written by this guy on the right, a guy named Wallace Nichols, who has since been a promoter and supporter of our program and works with us, has worked with us in the past. And we look at the science in there that really looks at how our brain responds to being next to water. We thought, well, this is it. This has got to be the next step. Just how do we do it? And coincidentally, we got a phone call from this guy on the right, his name is Tobin LaFrancois. He's a freshwater ecologist and a diver for the National Park Service, and he'd been doing some work trying to get kids in contact with water. And he had seen our photography that we had done, our terrestrial photography that we had done, and he literally, on the phone with us, said, hey, I got an idea. Let's take what you're doing and let's save it. Okay, that doesn't sound great, but I think I get what you mean. So we began to grow the program again. We reached out for some funding, we wrote some grants, we continued to build it, and we began to take the program underwater with exceptional results. This is the photo at the top of the St. Croix, by the way. That's the Gordon Dam at the top of the St. Croix River. It's where the National Park System begins. It's not the actual beginning of the watershed, but it's where the National Park starts. And this is us doing a pre-dive talk, getting ready to get in the water and snorkel, and we teach all the hard skills that kids need to know to safely be in the water. We work closely in a buddy system, and when kids are in the water, it cuts down that noise of the world that's around them. You're focused on what's right in front of you, and all that ambient sound, all that distraction is cut down, and you're looking at just what's right there and focusing on it with the camera. You have the opportunity to just be in that moment at that time. And that's so much of what our kids are in need of. And it also creates these wonderful opportunities for trusting another person and working closely with someone else, and direct feedback with staff and student. And the opportunity to learn not just the art of photographing what's under the surface, but the science of what's there as well. And like with our terrestrial photography, we began with our immediate back north, the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway, our inland lakes and rivers, and continue to grow from there. But I'm going to play a short video because one of our students can say a lot of this better than I can in his own words before I move on. So give me this technical moment here, I'll pull it up.
Passage due to some criminal behaviors, but I've been working really hard on getting out of here and just learning who my friends are and how to change who my friends are. I got to express myself when I first went underwater, and it just was like a whole new world. You could just let the water just bring you downstream and just drag your hands across the sand, and you just feel the rocks. With enough sunlight you can see the color and just the beauty of what's really under the surface. I don't know, it's really something special. You get to see fish in their own little world, you know, it's just something new, something really cool and unique. First time I ever seen a fish in water, I was like, whoa, not many people get to do this. And it was like at that moment my mindset just switched, you know. And I was like, I'm gonna quit all the things I've done in the past, you know, I'm gonna quit all the negative things. I'm gonna quit just being fake, I'm gonna be who I really am. It makes me feel happy that I can do something that I've never done before and just rock out on it. I grew up thinking that I wasn't going to make it to my 18th birthday, and coming to Passage made me open up my eyes and realize that there's a lot of things you can do out there, and underwater photography is like
So Matt talked there about, he alluded to this idea of finding strengths. Thank you so much for coming. Feel free to come in and grab a seat if you like, but continue to stand if you like too, that's all right. Matt talking there about, about finding strengths, essentially, and strength and purpose. And so much of what this program is able to do is to help kids discover a strength, an artistic strength, an opportunity to share something worthwhile with the rest of the world. We've had their photographs on display in settings like this, as well as both the Minnesota and Wisconsin state capitals, in galleries in all the national parks that we visited, in senators' offices across the state, in the capital, in Washington, and created opportunities for kids to speak and be in front of groups and get that positive feedback for what they've done, because that is vital in building confidence and helping them realize their own potential. Let alone just simply the act of being in the water and the calming and soothing elements that has. The opportunity to learn about what's under the surface, as Matt says, the diversity that's there. Anybody recognize what this is? It's a freshwater mussel. In our St. Croix Nemacoggin Riverway, there's over 40 different species, individual species of freshwater mussels. And these become some of the most fascinating subjects for kids to photograph, and their life story is actually really fascinating. When you look at a mussel like this, they create a lure to bring in fish, specifically, typically bass, that are attracted to the lure they make, and then the mussel will release essentially its babies onto the fish, and then the fish carries them upstream to distribute and spread the species and move around the riverway. And kids just become fascinated with that detail of what's there. And so they recognize what this is. This is a freshwater sponge. Our lakes and rivers throughout Wisconsin are full of freshwater sponges. We think sponges, we think the tropics. But all of our inland lakes, all our healthy inland lakes have freshwater sponges as a filtering and a healthy part of the ecosystem. And this is a colony, really, of individual cellular organisms called a bryozoan. So all these cool things that live under the surface wouldn't be discovered by these kids unless they were taking a closer look at it. The opportunity to see new things is inspiring. And seeing something every day, but seeing it in a new way. It's just simply the underside of a water lily here and seeing red instead of green. So following that line of thought, it continues to be inspiring for the kids, the way that our terrestrial photography was, to continue to write and find metaphor and meaning in the photography that they're doing. So when I look at this picture, I think that this leaf is crying for help, and no one is listening because he is silent. Even though no one will hear him, he still refuses to sing. So making that connection between what they're photographing themselves is another opportunity for them to say what's on their mind to a bigger audience. A couple of photos of brook trout that bring us up toward our tributaries to the Great Lakes. So this is on the Brule, which is one of the South Shore tributaries of Lake Superior. Another brook trout here. Not as crisp and clear of a photo, but a photo that's just a unique setting. This tiny brook trout, not tiny, an admirable brook trout, swam directly at this boy who took the photograph. His name is Seth, as though he was on attack. And Seth, big tough kid, jumped back as the fish swam toward him, but managed to get this photo at the same moment. So moving toward the Great Lakes is how we usually complete our season of underwater photography. We work our inland lakes, work the tributaries to the Great Lakes, and then end up in the Apostle Islands of Lake Superior, which is a whole different body of water, as we all know, just like Lake Michigan is. Different geology, different clarity of water. And to have kids have the opportunity to be exposed to that type of water that's really in their backyard for many of them, and see it in unique ways is just fantastic. And we continue to work closely with the National Park Service, who gives us really some fantastic access to the water there. There's a group from our boys program on an overnight outing to Sand Island in the Apostle Islands, where we were able to float out and dive from a Park Service boat. We did the same trip with our girls program. And to be able to dive off that boat that you saw in the previous photo, the bow that dips down into the water, and swim out off the bow, and explore the sea caves, and get right in and see these things firsthand. For years I guided sea kayaking trips in these caves, and I always wanted to swim out. Years I assumed, and kids in the trips got to swim the first time they saw them. It was just absolutely fantastic. I'm going to read this one this reflection by Rachel on that preceding photo. The great formations of the red rock, creating arches that surround me, blanketing all my worries, and that was just the tip. The depths were what attracted me. I let my ears sink below the surface to where I could see nothing but the unknown, and I felt comfort in the place of silence where I could connect to the solitude and just undiscovered secrets that lay beneath it. And Rachel has a number of photos that are on display out in the hallway here as well. She's a uniquely gifted photographer. And Jade, you can read this one too, it's worthwhile saying out loud. Into the water I went, washing away the pain the scars left. I watched the memories float down the stream, away from my thoughts, away from me. Submerged in the peaceful currents, I let myself go for just a moment. As I rose up out of the water, the sun seemed to shine brighter, and I knew I was going to be okay. Similar sentiment to that Wendell Berry poem that we opened with. Just the peaceful waves. And the calmness that the vast expanses, we know when we look out over a wide horizon that the lakes give us, and that big body of water, to feel that power of something else near you is priceless. And to discover what's underneath. Everyone here read the book was the Dan Egan book, The Death and Life of the Great Lakes, correct? I think he referenced some 6,000 shipwrecks that were in the Great Lakes. Off Stockton Island and the Apostles, there's a couple of shipwrecks that we're able to access, and these are at about 10 to 12 feet of depth, where kids are actually diving down. Again, everything we do is by snorkel. We don't do any scuba work, so diving down deep to see these wrecks is a pretty fantastic experience for them to be able to be a part of. And the Great Lakes don't always offer the same photographic subjects that the inland lakes do. In the inland lakes we see fish, we see mussels, we see the sponges and bryozoans, and a lot of the charismatic megafauna, if you will, the big things that are fun to see. The Great Lakes offer as an artistic subject fodder for more abstract art, if you will, with the light and the color and the patterns that are created. And getting that feedback, this is one of the park rangers that works in the Apostle Islands, and the years that we've done these trips with our girls program, she captains our boat and comes out and is really part of the group and provides that feedback, that positive feedback, and that shared joy of the program with the kids. And again, more of the abstract form of art that the Great Lakes provide with their clear water. Nearly paintings compared to the inland subjects. Another reflection from Haley. Lately I've been waking up to the beautiful sun. Lately I've been thinking about my life and how grateful I am for having light, for having loving and caring people in my life. Lately I've been thinking about my new life at home and how I'm going to deal with all my emotions, and I came up with the simplest answer to that in photography. So really helping kids to see the positive things, the hope, the potential healing is what the program is all about. and what we were able to try to achieve by getting them in the water, by getting them in contact with nature. This last photo and reflection I'm going to share with you is taken by the young woman on the right. She's also in the center of the photograph there. And this is on a trip that we did with a group of graduates, kids who had successfully been for a program and had been out of the program for a number of years. Every one of the kids in that group over here were able to go on a trip that the National Park Service supported us in to drive Tortugas National Park, which is west of Key West. We went down there on a 10-day expedition as guests of the park. And it was truly exceptional. It was something I've never experienced before. It was just a great opportunity. We were hosted by this gentleman right here, who's not in that photo, he's taking this photo. A guy named Brett Seymour, who's easily in the probably top 5 underwater photographers in the world. He's really an exceptional, talented guy. He runs something called the Submerged Resources Center of the National Park Service. And he had noticed the work the kids had done and invited us and said, I want to create some opportunities for you guys. So we can try to do this. Let's create this opportunity and bring a group of your students down to this unique park that helped form my life and helped direct me where I went in my career. And his camera, the camera here that Sadaf is holding, is his extremely valuable camera. And he said, yeah, Sadaf, you go ahead and use this. It's just fine. Go for it. So just the trust to bring us down, to use the gear they had, and to show us around this place, it was very meaningful to him. But Sadaf took this photo, this next photo here, entitled Forever and Dead. And she had been with on these Great Lakes trips, the Apostle Islands trips. But I'm going to read her reflection here on that. And it has a lot of some meaning here. So, Forever and Dead. People are taught the same few things. Don't let anyone push you around. Stay firm in your beliefs. Don't tolerate intolerance. Rather, stand up against it. Doing this will help you be confident. But as I float here in the seemingly endless abyss of blue, I settle on one thing. These waves can toss me about wherever they so please. I will gladly be enslaved by this body of water. Being here can change any opinion I might have had. I will tolerate this lake's intolerance, peacefully, confidently, and joyfully. I will never fight against chaos. I will do this all without a single complaint, because I am forever indebted to this great lake. After all, this lake saved my life. And that was taken in the Apostles on one of the trips, and she means it. Being in the water genuinely changed her life, and having access and maintaining access and maintaining the health of these ecosystems so kids and all of us can appreciate and enjoy and continue to use these treasures that we have, these Great Lakes that we have, is incumbent upon us, and hopefully we can continue to have these as resources that we can access. So, thank you very much. I would love to entertain questions and conversation if anybody has any. So, thank you.
Is it realistic to think when they leave your program and go back to their homes that they continue with this?
Yeah, you know, it's in photography, so with terrestrial photography, we offer an opportunity for kids to write themselves a grant through a foundation, a fund foundation we have, where they can write and request a camera to take with, and then we remain in contact with them and encourage them, kind of prod them a little once in a while, say, hey, what photographs have you been taking? Where have you been getting out? How have you been using your camera as a vehicle to be in nature? And we see a lot of kids to continue to do photography as a means of getting in contact with nature and being in nature. So yeah, it is a realistic opportunity for a lot of kids. Yeah. Underwater photography, on the other hand, it's tough because it takes a team. It takes a whole group. And that's why we try to create as many opportunities like the graduate trips to bring kids back in. Great question.
So how long are the kids with you?
It really depends, and I've got some material out on the table. I have a table back there with some info, but anywhere from 6 months to a year to longer, depending on each individual's situation. There's a lot changing here. Yeah.
So they're on site for those 6 months?
They're on site, yeah. It's a residential program, so when they're with us, they're food, their medical care, their entire treatment team. So they're with us all the time, year-round. Yeah. Yeah.
And then they transition back into their high school, or?
They transition back, and it's really dependent individually with the kid. Sometimes it's back home into their high school, sometimes it's home into a transitional foster home, sometimes into a group home. It really depends on the individual and setting.
And how many kids do you have at a time in
At
general?
between the three programs, about 75. Yeah.
In a big campus.
Two campuses, actually. Yeah, so one of the campuses is our dedicated boys program, and the other one is our girls program and our assessment program, which is a 1-month assessment program where kids come for a full assessment and treatment plan. It's 30 days working with our psychologists and therapists and teachers and pediatricians and full treatment team. And some of those kids go into our treatment program, some go back home with a treatment plan to work outpatient and working with their local team members.
So this photography program, is that like an experience every week?
Every week, every kid's involved in photography on it's a regular part of their schedule as much as going to school would be or seeing their therapist would be.
So they got everything else going on, plus
everything else going on, plus this. Yeah, yeah. And obviously we're seasonally based with our water photography.
Yeah.
But try to stretch that season as much as is reasonable. You know, beginning early with pool sessions so kids get comfortable with the gear and being underwater and learning the skills. And then you can only push it so late for the fall.
Right.
And we do, as you probably noticed from all the photos, kids are in wetsuits. Wetsuits add so much. They add this layer of comfort and confidence and buoyancy. Gosh, a 7 mil wetsuit, you're like wearing a life jacket around your whole body, which is comfortable but tough for diving. Those deeper photos make it challenging. It's amazing what kids learn to do, they do well with. So wetsuits, fins, snorkel masks, it's a whole setup, and the support we received from UWC grant, which is the reason that I'm here today, has been crucial in making that possible. It's a big investment in making it happen. And continuing the program takes significant financial support. It's outside of the realm of what most funding supports. So we're constantly writing grants and seeking support for the program.
Is there a foundation that supports you overall, or from the state? Or?
We have, for the core program, it's a fee for service. So whether kids are coming adjudicated or through courts, through county systems, or through family or private referrals, it's insurance funding. So for the core program, it's a fee for service model, like any healthcare setting would be.
There's got to be some of these kids that come from the inner city,
Yeah.
you know, do you follow up with them too? I mean, that's got to be a tough environment.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much, not much nature
It is tough.
in some of those areas.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
We do follow up. We maintain aftercare for just keeping in contact and following how they're all doing. And again, the outcomes are different, like we talked about before. The program outcomes are across the spectrum, just like the kids' situations when they come in are across the spectrum. But it's actually amazing. We try to provide resources, whether it's a local state park or a local park, just knowing that these resources exist, and they have access to get to them if they are so motivated.
Okay.
Well, I'll be around for a while. If you guys have questions, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
For being here.